Pokemon Scarlet and Violet anime is the newest installment of the Pokemon anime series and begins a new era of Pokemon after following Ash Ketchum's journey for the last 25 years since Kanto. Ash Ketchum is no longer the main protagonist of the anime, as that torch has been passed on to the new main protagonists of Liko and Roy, with a new story in the Pokemon anime beginning to unfold, and with Ash no longer being the main protagonist, where will the Pokemon anime go from here? People have speculated that this anime will be a time skip, that these new main protagonists will be Ash's children. Maybe this will take place in a different Pokemon universe altogether. There's many possibilities. But to celebrate 25 years of Pokemon anime, today I'd like to offer my vision for how the new Pokemon Scarlet and Violet anime can be something great, as it has tremendous potential to start off and end incredibly well. I'll be going over potential story and plot points for Liko and Roy, what the atmosphere and premise of this new anime would be like, and how the overall narrative of this anime would progress over the next 3 years. Please keep in mind this video is scripted and released prior to me viewing the debut episode of the new Pokemon anime, so I won't cover any details that you may have noticed in the first episode. But with that being said, let's dive into my vision for the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet anime. Let's get started. Let's begin by discussing the premise and overall atmosphere of the new Pokemon anime. Many fans were quite annoyed and displeased with roughly 70 to 75% of Pokemon journeys being set in the Kanto region when that series was portrayed as a traveling series across all known Pokemon regions from past generations. Ash and Go may have done a decent amount of traveling, but not nearly as much as we had initially thought they would. So for this series, I think it'd be best if this series goes back to a traditional format, with it being a regular traveling series as we follow Liko and Roy's journey through the Paldea region. Now this seems most likely given the official artwork that was revealed back in December of 2022, shortly after the ending of Pokemon Journeys. It seems as though Roy will catch Quaxly and Fuecoco, while Liko will own a Sprigatito. We haven't had a traditional traveling series since the days of XY, which was 7 years ago at this point. Bloody hell, I feel old. Many fans have wanted this return to familiarity for quite some time, and I think Paldea is the perfect region for this, as the story of the Scarlet and Violet games is quite diverse and unique. With 3 separate storylines in Scarlet and Violet, there becomes at least 3 different routes the anime can pursue with Liko and Roy. This in turn gives rise to many more different possibilities for character integration in the anime, because various characters could be used in various ways to interact with Liko and Roy. First and foremost, I'd like to state that I think it would be a great idea for Liko and Roy to have no connection or tie to Ash Ketchum and be completely new trainers in a new era of Pokemon. This would allow for a clean slate and fresh start for the new anime as we enter a new era of Pokemon. But I personally believe that these two would be better handled in one of 2 ways. If they are indeed the children of Ash, or, my preferred situation, if these new characters are simply inspired to start their journey because of Ash. The main inspiration behind this video actually comes from one of my favorite anime, Yu-Gi-Oh!, but specifically Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Yu-Gi-Oh! GX is the direct sequel to the beloved original Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, and is the first of the multiple Yu-Gi-Oh! Spin-offs. The series begins with the episode The Next King of Games. Jaden is trying to make it into the Duel Academy entrance exams on time with his elemental hero deck. On his way there, he fatefully runs into Yu-Gi-Moto, who gifts him the iconic winged Karibo card. Season 1 of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX is filled with many callbacks and references to the original series, and even features multiple cameos of original characters, from the Paradox Brothers to Pegasus to the man, the myth, the legend, Seto Kaiba himself. Season 1 also offers familiarity with Jaden and Cyrus filling the roles of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Joey, essentially, Zane being the new Kaiba in a way, and even the whole Shadow Rider plot mirroring Battle City and the Rare Hunters. This show does take place 3 years after the events of the original series and displays great continuity while also being its own series with its own self-contained stories and narratives. So I believe the premise of the new Pokemon anime would best serve as a direct sequel or successor to Pokemon Journeys, that way continuity can be maintained. Similarly to how Ash's adventure from Kanto to Sinnoh was one continuous journey on screen, and how the Black and White series still features continuity despite no direct transition into the series from Diamond and Pearl. With that being said, let's dive into how the premise of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, as well as the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet games, can drive the story for the new Pokemon anime. In Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, there are three main stories: Victory Road, which is your traditional gym challenge, the Path of Legends, focusing on finding the Herba Mystica with Arven, and Starfall Street, which focuses on defeating Team Star. These stories can be done one at a time, simultaneously, or however you see fit, which means there's already three possibilities for Liko and Roy. In addition, the story of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX begins with Jaden, like many other duelists, wanting to be the next king of games. Season 1 heavily focuses on this, and also a bit of Season 2, but then the tone shifts to Jaden really just rediscovering his passion for dueling and being the best he can be, while also just having a good time with dueling. But what does this have to do with the new Pokemon anime? Well, I believe if this anime is going to directly continue on from Ash's story as we move forward into a new era, then like I previously mentioned, Liko and Roy should be inspired by Ash to begin their journeys. Even if they've never met him, I believe they would still know who Ash is and would mention how they want to be as great a trainer as him one day, whatever path they may take to get there. It would also work really well if they meet Ash while they're potentially at an airport waiting to take a flight to Paldea in episode 1. In similar fashion to Yugi, we won't see the top half of Ash's face, but we'll see his outfit, maybe an updated Journeys outfit, and we'll hear his voice, hopefully allowing Serenade to return for various cameos. We'll clearly know this is Ash. This moment would serve as a great bridge between the previous and new era of Pokemon and would be a nice treat for older fans as well as the newer fans who just said goodbye to Ash Ketchum. This would inspire Roy to potentially take on the gym challenge like Ash alongside his Quaxly and Fuecoco. Maybe Liko can go up against Team Star as she embraces Ash's characteristic of doing what's right and standing up for others. Another factor from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX that I want to mention is the two-part duel between Jaden and Dimitri in the King of Copycats. Jaden may not have dueled against Yugi until the finale of the show, but in this two-part duel he does go up against Yugi's legendary deck. Dimitri steals and shows off Yugi's deck perfectly, but Jaden still manages to win, but not without some heavy struggling. Now why bring this up? Because I believe this would be another great writing point for the Scarlet and Violet anime. Now this can be done one of two ways in my opinion. The first scenario involves Ash actually being in Paldea near the current area that Liko and Roy are exploring. They would see one of Ash's new Pokemon, I think he'd catch a Charcadet, or maybe they see a Pikachu but don't know it's Ash's. They would follow the Pokemon and thus would have their second encounter with Ash. Both of them would challenge Ash to a battle, and rather than a 1v1, I feel it should be a 3v3. The duel between Jaden and Dimitri occurred somewhat early in Season 1 of GX, so if this battle happens early in the new anime, I'm sure they'd still have at least 30 Pokemon by about 20 episodes in. While being inexperienced, this battle would allow them to show off their current skill at that time. Plus, this would be in line with Ash's character to offer a 3v3 battle as well, since it would be more fun for him. Ash could use Pikachu and two veteran Pokemon like Lucario and Talonflame, or he could use Pikachu and two new Paldean Pokemon like Kilowattrel and Charcadet. Of course Ash would win, and maybe Charcadet loses since it's not that strong yet, but this would be a great boost in motivation to help Liko and Roy grow as trainers. Scenario 2 involves a trainer from Paldea. Maybe this is an Ash Ketchum fan that we see debut in episode 1, or maybe it's somebody like Nimona battling against Liko and Roy. This trainer would use 3 Pokemon that Ash has used in the past. I think 3 great Pokemon for this battle would be Phanpy, Fletchling, and Rockruff, all Pokemon that can be caught relatively early in Scarlet and Violet. Having these 3 Pokemon get used in battle would slowly cause Liko and Roy to recognize that all 3 are Pokemon that Ash has used in battles in the past. So spiritually, this would resemble them battling Ash in a way. Plus it would be a nice reference to some of Ash's older Pokemon. They would probably still lose since this character would most likely be a rival character, or maybe Liko could lose and Roy could win, which could create a dynamic between them where one feels behind the other, motivating her to do better. Now this is important since it would strongly motivate Liko and Roy to keep getting stronger across the story of the series despite which scenario occurs in the anime, and I think all this should culminate in one final battle against Ash after they participate in the Paldean Champion Assessment, regardless of if they win or lose in those battles. Ash can act as a super boss battle in the anime, which would be pretty cool. As for the pre-existing stories that Liko and Roy could follow, I personally believe all 3 of these stories should be experienced by them simultaneously, since they will most likely be dual protagonists like Ash and Go were. But if they didn't, then I could see Roy pursuing the gym challenge and Liko pursuing the Path of Legends, and then both of them taking on the Starfall Street storyline. But beyond just Paldea and the story we could have, there's one matter I want to discuss in terms of the regions of the Pokemon world that Pokemon Journeys didn't fully tap into. Throughout the new Pokemon anime, there should be various arcs that occur in other regions of the Pokemon world in order to keep up continuity, keep the Pokemon world connected, and try and keep the gap somewhat bridged between older and newer viewers. To make it an arc, we'll need at least 3 episodes dedicated to the specific region, a clear reason for going, and then develop a clear goal Liko and Roy would be working towards while they're there. This wouldn't be too hard to do and would greatly benefit the anime as a whole, and we know it can be done because Pokemon Journeys has one instance where they perfectly delivered on this idea that I'm talking about right now, the Arceus Chronicles. In the middle of Pokemon Journeys, we received the 4-part special known as the Arceus Chronicles to help promote the release of Pokemon Legends Arceus. Although in hindsight it could have just been called the Heatran Chronicles since the special focused more on Heatran than Arceus, but whatever. This 4-part special entirely focused on Ash and Go visiting Sinnoh again during the Hisui Festival to celebrate Sinnoh's past. It wasn't one episode with a basic plot, this wasn't a generic filler in another region, this was a purposeful return to Sinnoh that brought back Brock and Dawn, Team Galactic, even Cynthia. It felt like a continuation of the Diamond and Pearl anime, almost like an epilogue. This special was so well received for many reasons. For one, we have the best companion Brock and best Pokegirl Dawn back with Ash again. Cynthia is helping, Cynthia shows off a new team member being Roserade, Team Galactic is involved trying to bring back Cyrus, which is actually quite touching, and the writing for this special was incredible. There was directive in each episode, great pacing and intensity, and there weren't really any wasted moments. My only complaint is that Arceus really didn't do much at the end of the day. So why wasn't the rest of Pokemon Journeys like this? I have no idea. But this could mean great things for the new Pokemon anime. If we got arcs like this in the new anime similar to the Arceus Chronicles, then the new Pokemon anime could achieve what Pokemon Journeys failed to do. Now of course I firmly believe this series should largely take place in Paldea as they travel across the region. But every other region should at one point get its own dedicated arc. And all that has to be done is simply mentioning one character or place or Pokemon from that specific region to spark an interest or curiosity in either Liko or Roy to get them both to travel to the other region. A good example, and by far the easiest, would be that they arrive at Mesagosa for the first time, and shortly after, or even in the next episode, a character like Professor Clavel or Nemona can make mention of a Pokemon school in a faraway region. They can simply make reference of Alola's Pokemon school or directly mention it. Either way, this would intrigue Liko and Roy to look into the school and then want to travel to Alola to see the similarities and differences between school in Alola and school in Paldea. That alone would be rather interesting, but of course the trip itself would also need to serve some purpose in developing Liko and Roy as characters and as trainers. Maybe visiting Alola can help them de-stress after being so caught up in trying to become stronger trainers. Maybe Kiawe can help them get better at battling. He could even be the kahuna of Akala Island by now. But this is just how easy it would be to segue from Paldea into a trip to another region with a meaningful purpose and direction. And I'm hoping the new Pokemon anime can have at least a few arcs similar to the Arceus Chronicles. Now the last thing I'd like to discuss would be the potential teams that Liko and Roy could have on their journey. Personally, I feel both of them should have the same team structure, and what I mean by that is each of them should have 3 Pokemon from Paldea, 2 regional variants or evolutions from Paldea, and then 1 Pokemon that Ash has caught on his journeys from the past series. Now why have this type of team composition? Well, for one, it helps them show off lots of new Pokemon from Paldea, whether they're brand new or if they are regional variants and or evolutions. On top of it, it gives attention to the Pokemon that have those regional variants / evolutions as well, such as Quagsire and Tentacruel. Finally, I think it'd be good to give each of them 1 Pokemon that Ash has caught to symbolize just how much they've been inspired by Ash. I mentioned earlier that a good premise of this show would be for them to meet Ash before going to Paldea, or to just be inspired by him growing up by watching the battles from the various leagues he's attended. With that explanation out of the way, let's dive into the potential teams I think Liko and Roy should have in the anime. Let's start with Liko. Her team should be Meowscarada, Armarouge, Tinkaton, Paldean Tauros Water Breed, Clodsire, and Staraptor. She's shown with Sprigatito by her side in the official premiere artwork for the anime, so I'd imagine it would fully evolve into Meowscarada, unless it's treated like Serena's Braixen, in which case it'll only become Florigato in the main series. I can see both Liko and Roy catching a Charcadet and then each of them getting a different evolution to show off both forms and to represent both games. I feel Armarouge goes better with Liko since Roy could potentially be portrayed as a goofy male protagonist that could play tricks with Ceruledge, while Liko and Armarouge would be more mature and level-headed. Tinkaton is just a tough pink Pokemon and it has a more feminine vibe to it, but it is also incredibly tough and strong, so I think this would pair well with Liko. It could also be a good representation of Liko's growth as a trainer. She could catch a Tinkatink early in her journey, and as they get stronger together and more experienced, Tinkatink's gradual evolution into Tinkaton would be symbolic of her growth and development. Paldean Tauros is here to fill the spot of a regional variant, but I've added the water variant for diversity on her team and more coverage. Plus, if Liko is portrayed with a caring nature, then the water type would pair well with that. Clodsire is here for a regional evolution, and plus I think it's pretty cute and derpy like the original Quagsire, and I could see Liko, like many fans did, falling in love with this Pokemon. And lastly, we have Staraptor for some flying representation, and it's also a Pokemon owned by Ash, and Liko surely would have seen participating in the Sinnoh League on TV. Plus it can be caught very early on in a Paldean adventure, so this would be a nostalgic capture for fans if Liko catches this Pokemon within the first several episodes. For Roy, his team should be Skeledirge, Cerulege, Kilowattrel, Kingambit, Toedscruel, and Donphan. Roy is shown with Fuecoco and Quaxly by his side in the official artwork, but I'm not really a fan of Quaxly that much despite its cute appeal, and I'm definitely not a fan of its evolutions, so I didn't bother putting Quaxly on his team. Instead, I could totally see him training up a Fuecoco into Skeledirge to rival Liko's Meowscarada. Cerulege is here because, as mentioned earlier, I can see both of them catching a Charcadet and each of them receiving the opposite evolution. I feel Cerulege would fit well with Roy, especially if he would enjoy pulling pranks with a ghost type. Kilowattrel is here for coverage with electric flying and to provide an awesome aerial battle against Liko Staraptor. Plus I think it would be cool for a main character to have this typing on their team, since this typing has always been locked behind legendary Pokemon. Gambit is here to give him a regional evolution, and this Pokemon is just so damn cool. I wasn't big on Poniard and Bisharp when they were first revealed, but like a lot of Unova Pokemon, I've come to love it now, and they somehow made Bisharp cooler than it already was with this evolution into Kingambit, and I think it would fit well with Roy. Next is Toedscruel as another regional variant, but based on convergent evolution, which I think is neat. Toedscruel is still as tough looking as the original Tentacruel, and I think evolving Toedscruel into this Pokemon would be a great way to demonstrate Roy's progression into a tougher trainer and stronger character. Plus using its tentacles would offer some creative battle strategies. And lastly is Donphan, which of course was owned by Ash and provides some decent type coverage. Plus this would allow for an easy segue into having Liko and Roy learn about Paradox Pokemon. Also, seeing Roy raise his Phanpy into a Donphan would be great for nostalgia. There's many more choices we can go with due to Paldea's excellent variety in its Pokédex, and you may have even noticed that these teams I mentioned here are different from the teams I originally created for Liko and Roy in their own dedicated videos. This was done to spice things up and show off different team builds. Plus these teams are built in a specific way rather than just making teams for them using new Paldean Pokemon. But let me know in the comments which Pokemon you would love to see on their teams. Thanks so much for watching, and let's enter the new Pokemon anime with excitement. Let me know what you thought of my ideas and thoughts in the comments, and until next time, train hard, and I'll catch you guys later.